details for you. Stay with us. That's the latest from Musa Danquest Global Info Analytics. Well, tonight we're getting to it. Also, much later, government says COVID-19 is under control as Minister of Health briefs Parliament on the situation. Stay with us. We've got details for you. We'll have a virologist at the Noguchi Memorial Center for International Research also joining us for a conversation on this latest from the health minister. All these plus we're getting some news coming through as well, so stay with us here on Ghana Tonight. As always, an integral part of the conversation. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and on X. Let's get talking. We'll tell you about the latest regarding the suspended implementation of the energy sector levy, that 1 cedi additional levy that was approved by Parliament was to be implemented a couple of weeks ago. The decision by the GRA to postpone it because they had taken consideration of some elements of the happenings within the economy and beyond. Well, there's some news coming in that regard, but I'm going to go for Ghana Brief, after which I'll tell you about the latest coming through on what was captioned the D-levy. Stay with us. This is Ghana Brief.
The Attorney General, Dr. Dominic Ayine, has filed a motion at the Accra High Court praying for the dismissal of a case filed by the suspended Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonum. According to court documents filed on Tuesday by Deputy Attorney General Dr. Justice Sermsai, the issues raised by the Chief Justice in her application have been addressed or remain pending at the Supreme Court. The embattled Chief Justice in the past few weeks have attempted to get the Apex Court to halt processes for her removal, but has failed. The Minister for Health says the resurgence of COVID-19 on the University of Ghana campus is under control, assuring that there is no need for panic. According to him, the current Omicron variant detected has treatment and is being managed. He spoke to the press after his briefing to MPs.
It's good to hear that the spike has been well contained, and just like you have also mentioned, we all have to bear in mind that COVID is still with us. It's not gone completely, and I can also assure you that neither is our resolve to tackle the COVID is also gone.
The minority in Parliament has criticised the bail conditions imposed on the former boss of the National Food and Buffer Stock Company, Alhaji Abdul Hanan Wahab. Deputy Minority Leader Patricia PJ says the weaponization of state institutions to punish former government appointees sets the country back in its justice delivery system. She has called for an immediate release of Mr. Wahab and his wife.
What was wrong yesterday remains wrong today, regardless of who is in government. Let us demand that our justice system be fair, not fearful. Let us resist the creeping abuse of power. Justice must not depend on political colors. We demand the immediate review of the bail conditions imposed on Mr. Wahab and his wife.
President John Mahama has urged Ghanaians to hold its leaders to the highest standards. He made the comments at the National Prayer and Thanksgiving service, where thousands of Ghanaians gathered to seek God's guidance and express gratitude for the nation's peace and stability.
Let us remain vigilant against the voices of tribalism, against the voices of religious extremism, and against the poison of political hostility. These are the seeds of division that we must never let take root in our precious nation, Ghana. We must speak a language of peace, compassion, and mutual respect We must hold those in authority, including myself, accountable to the highest standards of integrity and humility.
ECOWAS is urging restraint and peaceful dialogue following recent civil unrest in Togo, particularly in Lomé, which has led to casualties and damage. The Commission expressed concern and offered to support efforts to restore peace. Experts warn that continued instability in Togo could impact Ghana's inflation, as the country relies on some imported goods from Togo for urban market supplies.
It's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live on 3FM 92.7. Also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, and as always, probably brought to you by Flamingo Paint, Simply Superior, and Sasso Insecticide Spray and Coil Tuntum Preco. Coming up next, we're getting some information. This is news just coming in regarding the earlier decision by the Ghana Revenue Authority to postpone the implementation of the energy sector levy. We're going to put that on the screen right now. There's a statement that came through just a few minutes ago, and this is from the Ghana Revenue Authority. They're announcing the commencement of the implementation of the energy sector levy Amendment Act 2025, Act 1141. Here's the detail. Reference is made to their previous communication dated the 13th of June 2025, which announced the postponement of the implementation of this Energy Sector Levies Amendment Act 2025, which added an additional 1 cedi to the 95 pesos that we were paying in the price build-up for the fuel, the price of petroleum products that we see at the pumps. Now, this decision was taken, according to the GRA statement today, in consultation with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Energy to allow for a comprehensive monitoring of global market conditions and to safeguard recent gains in domestic pump prices. You recall that this statement earlier was put out there communicating the decision to postpone was as a result of the conflict between Israel and Iran, the height of it we saw a couple of weeks ago. Now we're seeing crude oil prices on the world market trending downwards. The GRA says they are pleased to inform us that following a thorough review of prevailing market indicators and in line with the government's commitment to ensuring stable economic conditions, the implementation of the Energy Sector Levies Amendment Act 2025, Act 1141, will now commence effective 16th July 2025. That's some 15 days away from today. 16th July 2025, as previously communicated in their that earlier release dated June 9, 2025, introduced an amendment to the following levy. So as we did the breakdown earlier, so this is what's going to happen now. From 16th of July 2025, when this amendment of the levy takes effect, we will see this levy on petrol now go up by an additional 1 cedi. Now, so we're going to pay 1 cedi 95 pesos. And this is in the price build-up. Remember, there are 3 components that determines the pricing of petroleum products at the pumps. Crude oil prices on the world market, which we don't have control over. The taxes and levies, which we have control over. And one of it is what we have just increased from 95 pesos to 1 cedi 95 pesos. And then the third component is the currency. We're seeing the cedi relatively stable against the dollar. So that's the third component as well. So as we're going to see now, from the 16th of July, we're going to have to pay a little more for the prices of petroleum products at the pumps. So essentially, 1 cedi 95 pesos per liter, but 4 cedis additional per gallon, because then you're going to have an additional 1 cedi on each liter, and you're having 4 liters to make up a gallon. So that's exactly how things are going to play out from 16th July, all things being equal. And bear in mind, this statement says the postponement was as a result of the global incidents in the Israel-Iran war. Things look stable now. So barring any unforeseen circumstances or all things remaining equal, this is going to take effect on 16 July. So we'll see how things play out. But this is Ghana Tonight. That's information coming through from the Ghana Revenue Authority. Coming up next here on Ghana Tonight, the Attorney General is urging an Accra High Court to dismiss a case filed by the suspended Chief Justice, Gertrude Tokono, her ladyship, Justice Gertrude Tokono. Now, we've got details of exactly what the Attorney General is asking of the High Court. But earlier today, we got information that the Attorney General urging an Accra High Court to dismiss a case filed by the suspended Chief Justice Gertrude Tokono. Documents filed in court by the Deputy Attorney General, Dr. Justice Shemsai, is arguing that the matters raised by the Chief Justice have been dealt with or remain pending at the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice has, in the last few weeks, if you recall, urged the Supreme Court and now the High Court to halt her removal process. In fact, this action by the Chief Justice is the sixth legal action that has been filed in court since the presidency announced the receipt of the petitions against the Chief Justice. We're going to get into the details of it. Let's recall exactly what the Chief Justice, when she addressed the press last week, indicated about a judicial review. And my colleague Joseph Akable, a legal affairs correspondent, is with me in the studio. We'll get into the details of the Attorney General, in fact, the state's contention against the CJ's position on this matter. Joseph, it's good to have you.
Always good to be here.
Perfect. Let's set the tone, shall we? Recall what Gertrude Tokono, her ladyship, said last week regarding this judicial review. Let's get into it.
It is this total absence of compliance with all known rules of fair hearing that has caused my lawyers to file application for judicial review in the High Court to declare all the proceedings void. Because the clear danger is that through this flagrant violation of CI 47.
So that's the position as espoused last week. Let's get a bit more detail about the latest action and the decision as communicated today by the Deputy Attorney General who filed in court today.
And so in substance, what the state's case is a simple one. The Attorney General makes the point that the matters that are being raised by the Chief Justice are matters that have been dealt with in one way or the other by the Supreme Court, and there's also the possibility that if they've not been dealt with, it remains pending at the Supreme Court to the extent that the court has dealt with injunction aspects of it, and so the substantive matters remain outstanding. And so if that is the case, then why take the same matter to the High Court? And so we're going to start off first with the very latest that has come through. The latest is that the AG is asking the High Court to strike out the case that has been filed by the Chief Justice. Let's walk you through where we've come so far. So the pending cases that he makes reference to, that a number of cases are pending. First is Her Ladyship Justice Gertrude Tokono versus the Attorney General and 5 others. That is the case that went to the Supreme Court where the lawyers for the suspended Chief Justice, led by Alfred, had argued and urged the Supreme Court to halt the proceedings. You recall he had made reference to things that had occurred at the hearing of the committee, and the Supreme Court took the view that those matters are not matters that should be contained in the affidavit due to Article 1468, the requirement of it being an in-camera proceeding. And so the court struck out that particular matter from there. The other case that is also at the Supreme Court is the one filed by the Center for Citizenship, Constitutional Electoral Systems versus the Attorney General and 2 others, also raising procedural issues against the entire process. You recall the very famous one, Vincent Eko-Asefua versus the Attorney General. That is by the Member of Parliament. He took the matter to the Supreme Court, also represented by Godfrey Debo-Adame, the former Attorney General. That matter also went to the Supreme Court. An injunction application was dealt with. The substantive matter remains at the Supreme Court. Ebenezer Osei-Owusu was also one that the private citizen who had also asked for an injunction as well. That matter was also disposed of by the Supreme Court by way of the injunction application, but the substantive matter remained at the Supreme Court. Then there's another one of Theodore Kofi Atta-Korte versus the Attorney General as well. The latest action is the one filed by Her Ladyship Justice Gertrude Arabai-Sabato-Kono versus the Article 146 Committee and 6 others. She actually names the members of the committee as part of this judicial review action, and the sound that we played was her talking about the fact that she had instructed her lawyers to file this process, and she had explained that, well, she's not going down without a fight. She makes the point that as far as she's concerned, she believes that she has to take the steps to defend it, else they risk the possibility of people saying that what has transpired is right and can happen any other time. So let's take a step further and look at what she's raising in terms of the content of the judicial review application. She makes the point that up to now, there has been non-disclosure of the prima facie determination. You recall that once the petition went over to the presidency, the president and the Council of State came to a decision that, well, there's a prima facie case against her. The Chief Justice in a press conference made a point that, well, it's only fair that she is given a determination of the prima facie case so that she knows that among the list of allegations contained in each of the petitions against her, which ones have crossed that threshold and which ones have not crossed that threshold. She raised that same matter in the application for injunction at the Supreme Court. The court did not heed to that particular request that she made in respect of that particular point. Nonetheless, she's making the same point by way of the judicial review at the High Court. She goes on to say that her rights have been violated. If you recall in that press conference, she talked about how when she arrives at the Edu Lodge, she's thoroughly searched. She made reference to the fact that her family members are not allowed in there as well. Her phones, laptops are all taken from them as they go into the place. And she makes the point that even the venue itself, a secure facility, which she drew the connection with the plots and issues surrounding the murder of the judges and all of that point that she made over there. She goes on to say that the membership of the committee, you recall in that press conference, she specifically mentioned Justice Gabriel Scott Pamai, who is the chairperson for the 5-member committee. And the point he made was that one of the petitioners, that is Daniel Ofori, the petition that he filed, he had made reference to the fact that the Lord Justice who is presiding over the proceedings will be a witness that will be called upon to testify because he was on the panel that resulted in his arrest. You recall the court was sitting, a determination was made against the lawyer. The lawyer was not unhappy about it. The lawyer proceeded to make various comments in the courtroom. The court was displeased with it. They ordered his arrest, and that formed part of the petition. So that has to do with the Akologo one. The legal practitioner's petition. And she makes the point that, well, Justice Pama was part of that panel. Then in respect of the Daniel Ofori one again, she makes the point again that he also participated on that panel as well. And so she adds all to that to say that that membership of the committee is also problematic. But all these are matters that the Attorney General is replying to, and the Attorney General is saying that first, the matters raised have already been dealt with or pending at the Supreme Court. And so as a result of that, the case should simply be struck out. And the next date for the hearing is on the 15th of July, 2025. And we expect the legal arguments to take place in respect of whether the judicial review application that has been filed by the suspended Chief Justice should be allowed to remain at the High Court or it should be struck out by virtue of the points that are being raised by the Office of the Attorney General.
Is the contention of the Attorney General, by extension the state, that the matters pending before the Supreme Court have a bearing on the application for judicial review by the suspended Chief Justice?
Yes.
But that's for the High Court to determine, is it not?
In fact, already the legal experts are pointing out to the fact that, well, what you've taken to the Supreme Court how to do it, it's interpretative and enforcement jurisdiction. And they make the point that the court was being asked to apply various provisions of the Constitution. And they say that, well, look, if you take a look at the High Court's jurisdiction, the judicial review, what is provided for under Article 141, they make the point that it is a power that is exercising power over administrative bodies, quasi-administrative bodies, and all of that. And so the grounds for such an application, they make the point that is quite distinct from seeking the interpretation and enforcement of the Supreme Court. But the AG disagrees with that contention, and he argues, in fact, the affidavit that is filed in support of the application, they make the point quite strongly that those factual matters that have been raised in a different form, and the Supreme Court has already pronounced on it or will pronounce on it by virtue of the fact that the substantive aspects of the case remain pending.
Let's stay with me. Let's have a quick conversation on this matter because of the jurisdictional matter that you just raised, and this is where I bring in private legal practitioner, lawyer Lawrence Rekon. He's joining us on Zoom right now. Counsel, good evening. Thank you for joining us. If you can unmute for me.
Good evening to your viewers.
Perfect. Now, on the matter of the jurisdictional issue that Joseph just referenced, to the extent that the specific detail of what the powers of the High Court is regarding Article 141, and then also this quasi-judicial committee that is hearing the petitions against the Chief Justice. Now the Chief Justice has gone to the High Court insisting on a number of things be addressed. Is it an application that would be described as, from where you sit, a certiorari in the real sense of the word?
Thank you, Mr. Ocansey. Yes, I listened to Mr. Kable, and I agree with everything he said in respect of the opinions that has been shared by a section of lawyers. Now, what is the point? The point here is that there are 5 pending suits before the Supreme Court in relation to Article 146. That basically talks about the removal of superior justices of our court, including the Chief Justice, who is also a superior court judge. Now, they are there for the interpretation and other consequential orders in relation to the same Article 146. That, by so doing, they ask for an injunction. And as part of the injunction, some of the averments they made are in relation to the current application before the High Court, which is in respect of the application for judicial review, which has been filed by her ladyship. Now, the argument made by the deputy AG, it's quite difficult for me to understand as well, because if you look at the suit before the Supreme Court, right, that was for interpretation of Article 146 and other related matters in relation to Article 146. Now, if you look at Article 141 of the 1992 Constitution, it states that the High Court has supervisory jurisdiction over all lower courts and lower administrative bodies. Now, the committee that has been set up by His Excellency the President is performing a quasi-judicial function. And as such, it is described as performing an administrative function. Therefore, the High Court under Article 141 has power to exercise that kind of supervisory jurisdiction over them. And if you look at the Constitution, it talks about when the High Court is exercising its supervisory jurisdiction, it will give orders in the nature of judicial review, such as certiorari, mandamus, quo and the likes. So the Chief Justice is in the proper forum for enforcing or invoking the supervisory jurisdiction of the High Court over the committee. So that one, there is nothing wrong with it, because it is stated under Article 141. Now, the question here is that whether the things that she has stated in her affidavit in support of the application for judicial review, okay, will be one that the High Court will find meritorious. That is a discussion that we can have, but we can't go into the merit of it. But for the forum, it is the proper forum.
I acknowledge the limitation that we have, and obviously we would not want to venture into matters of sub judice. But then again, one of the issues she raises is that she doesn't have the prima facie established against her. She doesn't have a copy of it. And then also, I recall last week during that press conference, she had indicated that she does not have a copy of the petitions that the committee is using for the hearing. But can it be the case, or is there any merit in that particular position that she suspects the details of the petitions being used or being relied on by the committee is different from the details of the petition that she has, which was made available to her by the president?
Mr. Ocansey, the issues her ladyship discussed in the media in relation to fair hearing, to the extent that she has not been given a written, reason, okay, for the prima facie determination and also the petitions. To me, it's a bit worrying, because we know that she wrote a letter to His Excellency requesting for the petitions. And she was finished with those petitions, the 3 of them. So I'm surprised that at this stage, of the committee's work, she will still complain about not receiving the petitions. What I heard her say was that when she went before the committee, she was expecting that the committee will give her the petitions. But once the president has furnished you with the petitions, what other petitions are you expecting from the committee? Because the committee was set up based on these 3 petitions. And already the president has furnished you with the petitions. So it's a bit difficult to understand what she wants. Don't forget, last week she discussed the petitions in the media. So the question here is that which petitions was she discussing? If she didn't have the petitions, what petitions was she discussing? It's difficult to understand. We all know she has the petition. So on that score, I tend to disagree with her. On the issue of prima facie, it's not one that, yes, it would have been desirable, let me put it that way, if His Excellency would have furnished her with the prima facie determination. However, the question here is that without the president finishing her with the prima facie, okay, a reasoned written prima facie, would that negate the work of the committee, or is it one that the High Court can make a case that she has been denied fair hearing? That is a question the High Court will answer on the 15th of July, 2025. And I believe when it comes to certiorari, it is right that you may satisfy the conditions for certiorari. However, because it is a discretionary power, okay, the Supreme Court has said in a number of cases, including the case of Republic versus High Court, General Jurisdiction, S Party, Kennedy Ohene, Japan, that when it comes to certiorari, the court exercises a discretionary power. And you can satisfy the conditions. If they want to refuse it, they will still go ahead and refuse it. So we'll all wait on the 15th and see how all this will play out. But let me quickly mention that when it comes to the application that has been filed by the AG, the application is to set aside the application for judicial review. So by practice, because the application was filed today, the court will hear that application first before they move to the substantive one that was filed by her ladyship for the judicial review. So if it happens that the court grants it, then it means there will not be any application for judicial review. But if they refuse, then whether on the same day or they will set another date to hear the application for judicial review.
I appreciate your thoughts on this and clearly giving us an indication of how the coming days will look like. Thank you so much, Lawrence Buampong. Reko is private legal practitioner. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight.
My pleasure, Mr. Ocansey.
Always. Now, Joseph, this is how the July 15th is a date to watch, is it not? And how the coming days will look like. Quickly.
Absolutely, because like you did indicate, there's going to be the first legal arguments that will take place has to do with the new application that has been filed by the Office of the Attorney General. That is what the court would have to hear and determine first. What we do not know is the implication of this on the pending processes at the committee, the hearing that is taking place at Edu Lodge. We've not seen the process that has been filed by Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice, so we can't even tell whether a request is being made for injunction and how the committee will approach it. We know that in times past, the committee took the view that an application for an injunction will not restrain it. But all those are matters that will bring our viewers the very latest as and when we have more to share.
And rightly so. Joseph Akablay, together with the legal team, is going to be following this every step of the way. So we'll update you and when it comes through. Thank you. Appreciate you as always. Joseph Akablay, the legal affairs correspondent, connected with us here on Ghana Tonight. But coming up next, let's stay on the matters of politics because, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing things play out very quickly in the New Patriotic Party. They have a meeting on July 3rd, as communicated by the national executives of the party in that statement last week. The latest poll by Global Info Analytics, as a research agency, showing that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is gradually gaining grounds and leadership in terms of the persons they surveyed and who they said they would vote for if elections were held today. That's according to the latest from Global Info Analytics, which was released earlier today by Musa Dankwa, and the information as we have it so far here on Ghana Tonight. And this is one that we've been looking at quite closely when the information came through earlier today. And from what we got to know, the online sample size of over 1,092, telephone sample size of 1,456. Then there were some face-to-face engagements. Persons who, beyond the online, so this was in three phases. This survey, according to Global Info Analytics, they did an online survey that engaged 1,092 people. And then they had a telephone survey that engaged over 1,700 people. And then also they had a face-to-face engagement, interaction with the respondents, over 7,000 of them. So almost 10,000 respondents if you combine the online, telephone, and face-to-face. And based on the outcome of this survey, from what they put out earlier today, if you take a combination of both NPP and NDC respondents, because as part of the questions they'll ask you, they'll find out your political affiliation, and so they know the people who are NDC and the respondents who are NPP. Over 50% of the respondents who are NDC, and then also majority of the respondents who are NPP, all put together, 56% of the general voter support was to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And take note of this, because there is a drill down to this 57%, because out of the 57%, the 56% as we are seeing, there is a population of NPP and NDC respondents. Now, within the NPP respondents population or sample size, 70% of those respondents who are NPP say that if elections were held today, they're going to vote for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. That's an increase of about 8% since April this year, when the last poll was put out by Global Info Analytics. So take note of that. This 56% is a respondents of both NPP and NDC. Now, when you look at the next person, Kennedy Ohenia Japong, a former member of parliament for the Asin Central constituency, the combination of NPP and NDC respondents, 23% of them, the total respondents, said if elections were held today, they expressed support for him, both NPP and NDC. But then if you drill down the data, 17% of the NPP sample within this 23% said they were going to vote for Kennedy Ohenia Japong if elections were held today. Then Dr. Yaosai Duchum, former education minister, his also, we see a drop of about 3% since the last poll of Global Info Analytics in April. 9% as we're seeing now. And within the NPP population that was surveyed in this poll, 7% said they were going to vote for him. And then, interestingly, Musa Dankwa decided to throw in Patrick Yabuama, who is the member of parliament for the Kaikwe Central constituency. And in fact, there are many who have also thrown his name in there, as well as one person that they think should be considering to test his mettle in this flag bearership of the new patriotic party. He has not come out to say anything of the sort or giving any indication whatsoever. He has only granted interviews raising concerns about the decision of the party to elect a flag bearer on the 31st of January 2026. He believes that the party should fix the problems before thinking about electing a flag bearer. But Musa Dankwa threw his name in there, and guess what? Based on the respondents, he even got much more support than Brian Echampo, who was already the former Greek minister and a Betifi member of parliament, who has already declared his intention to contest. And you can say these are early days yet, but guess what? If they're going to go with the January 31, 2026 date, it is not early days at all. It's just some 6 months away from the D-Day that the party would eventually approve as a day to elect the flag bearer of the party going into election 2028. Dr. Jonathan Asantiochi is a senior lecturer, political science department, University of Cape Coast. He's a political analyst. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. And you see the details of this survey, the latest poll by Global Info Analytics. You have a copy. Now, seeing that to the extent that with both PP and NDC respondents, majority of them are saying that if elections were held today, they're going to express their support for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, coming up tops amongst those who have declared their intentions to contest the flag bearership of the NPP. From the strategic point of view, would it be strategically advantageous for the party to still then go with this, that, well, even Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has support with NPP and NDC respondents as well? Or would it play to the party's good to, as it were, outwit the very obvious and present another candidate other than Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia?
Well, let's brief into your viewers and to your good self. Interesting questions you have there. Whichever way you look at it, it has its own ramifications. And what are they? First of all, when you talk about 50% of the NDC support base that were interviewed, preferring Dr. Bawumia to be the flag bearer, obviously that should tell you that they believe, because of the baggage that he has, not only his, that of the former president, it will be quite easier for the NDC, whichever candidate is elected, to beat Dr. Bawumia. That said, the other side is that it can only be when you have an economy that the NDC inherited from the NPP becoming worse off. And that is the only reason why Dr. Bawumia can have the opportunity to win the election. But if we are looking at the current situation as we find ourselves and seeing reduction in petrol prices, reduction, as it were, in transportation fare, the cedi appreciating against the dollar, then it becomes some kind of a Herculean task for the NPP and that of Dr. Bawumia should he emerge. And so the other thing too is that if he does not, then it means that whoever is going to come up as a leader of the NPP will be a wild card. And wild cards are usually dangerous because when you look at lawn tennis, for example, you have the world number one, and then suddenly a wild card would have qualified because of certain things that they would have done. The world number one does not know that particular player who is a wild card. They have lost matches to these individuals or players in time past. And so wild cards are very dangerous to play with. And so the other aspect in terms of a wild card is the fact that would Ghanaians readily risk the fact that someone who has not been tried and tested, for example, someone who is probably an upstart, so to speak, would they be ready to entrust the reins of governance in the hands of that person? I think that in itself would depend upon the way and manner that wildcard who will have been elected will conduct himself. And if he's able to conduct himself unconventionally, I've said that those things tend to confuse voters because that will mean that they do not really know that person. They do not know the ins and the outs of that particular person. They've not been so much aware of the political, style and strategy of that person, and so on and so forth. And so when that person goes on a promising spree, and you know very well that there are so many Ghanaians that are vulnerable, but these days it is very difficult, to just hoodwink people, say whatever you want, because they can really read in between the lines and tell you that you are fake. There's no way they are going to vote for you. But wildcards are always dangerous to play against. And that's the more reason why I'm looking at the issues, as you have asked, from these two perspectives. It is not going to be simple for the NDC to just be the wildcard because that wild card will dissociate himself from the record of Dr. Bawumia and that of the former president, especially the bad ones, and then will easily cling on the good ones and also say the things that he will want to do anew. And that in itself could easily, woodwink some of these voters, but not all. But there is the other, side of the equation, and that is the fact that as long as the NDC gets 2 or 3 acts right, that means that the MPP will struggle when it comes to the elections. What are they? I've already mentioned the first one, the economy. And once they handle the indicators of the economy that they inherited from the MPP with a good side of it, then there is no way any MPP candidate can beat them. 2, the transition. Once they're able to handle the transition carefully, and there's that internal understanding that all of us cannot be president at the same time, and that it ought to be somebody at this point in time, tomorrow it could be another person, that it means that there will be that, internal unity and cohesion. And once that is there, I think that the MPP will struggle for the first 4 and the second 4 years of the NDC.
Mm-hmm. I see. So I get it that you pin the fortunes of the MPP being enhanced in 2028 to 2 things: the state of the economy going into that election, which is going to be a major decider, as we saw in 2024, because people will look at the state of affairs, the state of their personal economy, and vote. The second will be what happens in the NDC, the state of the NDC going into that election, if the transition beyond John Mahama, who's not going to contest, would be chaotic or it would be seamless. That would then also influence how things will play out in terms of improving on the fortunes of the New Patriotic Party. But then again, it cannot also be contested that based on the survey details we've seen, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is the most marketed, right, amongst all the other persons who have declared their intentions to contest the flag bearership of the MPP going into 2028, is it not? I mean, from 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, 2024. You cannot discount that, is it not?
Certainly is the most marketed. The other candidates, they have some blemishes here and there in terms of Mr. Kennedy Japan, in terms of Brian Champon. But when it comes to the former education minister, I think he has a very fantastic personality. But as to whether the delegates are ready for him, that in itself is something that I cannot tell. Maybe only time will tell when he's been able to put his act together, get a strong campaign message, and get a strong campaign, team. And that in itself will be able to push. So if you have Dr. Educhum as a wild card, well, I think that the NDC leadership will have a rethink, because unless there is something untoward about the time that he handled the affairs of the education, then it means that he's good to go. But other than that, if you look at the hierarchy, if it's not Dr. Bawumia, it's definitely going to be Kennedy Japan. He has a lot of issues. Ghanaians do not believe that, well, they will want him to be the president. He can be the presidential candidate, so he may be popular within the party, but without the party, it has its own challenges. And that is the more reason why the delegate will only go for Dr. Bawumia, because they think that Mr. Kennedy Japan may not be too much attractive to those who are outside the party. And that is very important. And so, in as much as Dr. Bawumia is not a stronger candidate, internally and externally, they are looking at the less of the evils, the lesser of the 2 or the 3 evils. And that in itself is what will inform their decision as to whom they should choose, for that particular portfolio come 2028 elections. And so Dr. Bawumia may have the overwhelming popularity, so to speak. But as to whether he will have the will and the capacity and whatever it takes to win the 2028 elections, only time will tell. There are so many indicators that are against him in terms of demographics and other things. Leadership style, whether he's a good leader or not. Is he very firm when it comes to issues? Does he really communicate the issues so well? Does he filibuster, when it comes to issues that he ought to have been firm? I mean, do people really trust him? You remember that I was among the first, if not the first, that spoke about credibility crisis of Dr. Bawumia, and that went as far to affect, it went too far to affect his what's it called, his electoral fortune, and that is why he lost, overwhelmingly. But you see, you have the kingmakers; they will have to decide whether going with Dr. Bawumia is the right decision, or going with Kennedy Japan, or that of Dr. Brian Champon, who is a new entrant, so to speak. Sometimes I ask myself, you are the same person who gave an avowed support to Dr. Bawumia. What has really changed? Is it the case that because he was overwhelmingly beaten in the 2024 election, that's the more reason why you believe that you have a better chance of representing the MPP and then subsequently winning the elections? I think that the three have too many cobwebs, in their closet that Ghanaians will not really trust them that easily. Yes, Dr. Duchum, I think, may be a better candidate, but he can't win he's not in a position to win the membership of the party. And so that in itself is a difficult. Maybe he may be given the opportunity to assist Dr. Bawumia should Dr. Bawumia win the elections. But don't forget that there could be some surprises. But as it stands now, as far as the data is concerned, Dr. Bawumia is leading.
I appreciate your thoughts on this. Dr. Jonathan Asantioche, he is a political analyst. Thank you for joining us. He's a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. And yes, July 3rd, there's a meeting. That's 2 days away from today. We'll see what the outcome of the meeting will be. But then again, that decision of who leads the party is just going to be solely the responsibility of... Now there's a proposal that it should not be just delegates, a few persons selected as delegates to elect the flag bearer. There are those who are proposing that scope of the population within the party who elect the flag bearer should be expanded to include all eligible or members in good standing. We will be back shortly after this quick break. COVID-19 is on the radar as well. The health minister has been given an update. We'll tell you what's happening at the University of Ghana and what measures have been put in place to ensure that the spread is under control. Stay with us.
In my line of work, a confident smile is everything. Kale Charcoal Toothpaste keeps me on top of my game.
the health minister says there's no cause for alarm over the cases of COVID-19 at the University of Ghana. Late on delivering an urgent statement in Parliament on Tuesday, he assured that the situation is under control with 107 cases confirmed. Take a look.
Cases have been traced to a familiar variant, the Omicron subvariant, which we have managed before. It spreads easily, but fortunately, it usually causes mild illness. We found a few key issues that fueled the spread. The biggest factor was a recent hall celebration held in the university. These events brought large crowds together with little use of face masks or distancing. We also noticed a drop in adherence to basic COVID-19 safety protocols and some challenges with contact tracing. The Ministry of Health has made sure that our responses is well resourced. PPEs, test kits, and treatment supplies are all in place. Health workers are being supported, and emergency centers like the Ghana Infectious Disease Center are all on standby. This is a localized outbreak, and we are on top of it. There is no need for panic. However, we must remain vigilant and responsive.
Well, no need for panic. That's the assurance from the health minister. But this is what we do know. The suspected cases that have been recorded at the University of Ghana, 316 per the updates we got today, July 1. Confirmed cases, 107. The minister indicated no hospitalization and no or zero deaths. But as reassuring as this is, we also got to know that this Omicron variant or the strain of COVID-19 is, in terms of spread, very, very rapid. But then we want to find out a bit more. And the head of virology department at the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research is joining us on Zoom, Professor Joseph Humphrey. Kofi Boni, appreciate your time. Yes, we've gotten to know what the strain is, Omicron. It's highly transmissible. But then when it comes to the severity in terms of the morbidity and mortality, what can you tell us about that?
So in terms of severity, it is not as severe as some other, I would say some other strains, or the particular, even the sub-strains of that particular Omicron that we are talking about. We know about Deltas and other, but Omicron, it can easily be transmitted. And so it's highly transmissible. But when you talk about its severity, in terms of morbidity and even mortality, it is not as high. But that doesn't mean that those with other underlying health conditions may not have some complications if they should be getting this.
And it's a very important point to make about those who are having underlying conditions. I mean, do you see any difficulty in getting the university community to go back and adhere to the safety protocols that we appear clearly to have forgotten or moved away from, wearing of nose masks and so on, that even after these cases were confirmed, you don't see too many people on the university campus wearing the nose mask as was urged by the university authorities?
Well, I don't think it should be so much of a challenge. And I'm not sure we went out of this too long ago that people maybe have forgotten some of the basic protocols that we used to observe. If we are wearing respirators or let's say face masks, if we are practicing hand hygiene and distance from people who are coughing, sneezing and all that, I don't think it will be difficult for students to start observing these basic protocols that were more or less heightened during the height of the pandemic. Some few years back.
Right, but just for the assurance of the parents who are watching us right now, they have the awards at the university. Any word of assurance for them, just to complement what the minister said not too long ago? There's no cause for alarm, but you come face to face with the virus. You are at Noguchi. any word of assurance for the parents?
I mean, it's good that the university health authorities have sent out this circular. And I mean, I think it's widely read and people will just take precautions. I don't think we have forgotten what we used to do. I mean, so early. So the university community, everybody will take precautions. If you are not feeling well, down with these flu-like symptoms, and you think that you don't have to go to work, you stay at home. Practice those basic protocols that were put in place, especially wearing a respirator or nose mask, washing your hand regularly, staying a little distant from those who are obviously coughing, sneezing, and all that. I think these practices shouldn't be, totally be forgotten. We should be able to do this so that we can limit the spread of the virus. I mean, the more we limit its spread, the more we curtail. The virus is changing. We are talking about Omicron now, but so long as the virus persists in the human population and keep circulating, then we have the high chance of it mutating, changing. So we may be having a particular subvariant now, but when we allow it to keep circulating, it can change into other variants that may be more severe to us. So now the main issue is making sure that we take the necessary precautions and stop its spread.
It's a very, very important information. And Prof, before I let you go, we hear the minister say that the spread is contained within the university community. But the University of Ghana is an open community. People come in there and go. The students, they are amongst us within the society. They sit in trotro and all of that. And that whole week celebration had a lot of people who are not even students of the university coming there as well. I mean, that's concerning to say the least, that there could be a possibility that the virus is outside of the university walls as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, the route of transmission for respiratory infections, you can't stop it, because if you pick it, wherever you take it to, you sit in vehicles, you move around, you move with it. So that now the question is, if you feel unwell with any of these respiratory symptoms, you are having a fever, you're having a cough, you're having sore throat, running nose, all those ones, you take the necessary precautions. We are social beings, so we'll certainly interact, we'll move around and all that. But take the precautions, wear the nose masks, wash your hand regularly or frequently, and make sure help to stop the spread. It's very difficult to control infectious diseases that is airborne or spread through, those respiratory infections. It's very difficult, but we can do that if myself and you will just put those practices in place. We don't forget those basic protocols that we used to observe when we had that during the height of the pandemic period.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Joseph Kofi Bonny. Appreciate you. He's the head of Virology Department, Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. There's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. On behalf of the rest of the team, we do appreciate your company. Join us same time tomorrow for another conversation. I am Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
Sasso Insect